Okay, let's get started. Welcome everybody. This is Well, we're calling this Rewrite Bootcamp, but really this is more just like kind of a crash course in rewriting, I guess you might call it. And it's going to give you some of those basic foundation, or the basic elements that you'll need to know and to think about as you're going from draft 1 to draft 2 to draft 3 and beyond, potentially. And today we'll also have some time to organize our upcoming script swap. So if you're interested in getting feedback on a script that you've written before, but you haven't gotten that reading group or you haven't gotten those readers already, then you can do that today if you just stick around until the end of the class. Then we will have some time to pair up and everybody swaps scripts, and when we do these, you are intended to read and give notes on the other person's script within just 1 week. So it's a little bit more of a focus, guaranteed way to get that feedback without having to worry about, oh, is my partner going to actually fulfill their commitment? Are they actually going to make good on their promise of notes and these things like this? We are trying to have a little bit more, a tighter sense of accountability with the rewrites to make sure that you are getting everything you need before you move ahead into your next draft. So we are Script Camp. This is Script Camp right now that you're on. This is a Discord server. So if you're watching on one of our other sites like Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube, then we recommend you come join us on Discord, which you can find a link by going to our website, which is scriptcamp.net. There you can actually sign up for unlimited membership, which includes access to every class, every workshop, not just the free ones, which this one here is today. This is our sort of a free one-off class that's open to everybody. We have lots of those too, but if you want to get access to the full boot camps, which take you all the way from idea to finished draft of a brand new script or a rewrite project like this, then we have so many of those programs that you can check out by being a member. So if you sign up here, you can get your unlimited subscription, access to over 100 hours of classes every month, exclusive Discord channels and feedback, video library access, which includes videos of all the previously recorded classes, huge discounts off consultations, and we also have a 40% off if you're subscribing yearly. So definitely come by and join us. You can get the link to join our Discord server off of our website, which is scriptcamp.net, and we have many other servers in the sort of skill camp group as well. We are a nonprofit that's offering free and low-cost classes to help you learn new skills and reach your life goals. Script Camp is the biggest of our servers, with coming up on 5,000 members, which is awesome. We love all of our supporters on Script Camp. We have lots of other servers too, though, including WordCamp, which is more focused on novel writing, and I also teach weekly novel writing classes on Saturdays there on WordCamp. We have Film Camp for filmmaking, Creator Camp for content like YouTube creation, Toon Camp for animation, Design Camp for graphic design, Code Camp for coding, and we have lots of events that are pending in these servers and lots of things that we've done in the past. And some of these don't have active classes happening every week right now, but our goal is to keep adding to these and build them up over time so that eventually there will always be something happening on all of our different class servers. Right now, Script Camp is the biggest one, so if you're a member of Script Camp, you do get access to every single other thing here. So scriptcamp.net is where you will get your skill camp membership, I guess we would say. And by being a member, you can attend any event on any server at any time. This is me, I'm Connor. I've been writing full-length scripts since high school. Moved to LA in 2015 and got signed with my first manager at 2017. Wrote for Creepshow for the Shudder network, and mostly I'm a horror thriller kind of writer. Done a fair number of rewrites and polishes on independent horror thriller type movies. I teach the boot camps and weekly Writers Lab. We have 2 script swaps a week, so we're organizing for one of these now. We normally have these on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Why are there 3 days listed? Tuesday. Oh, I see. So the first one you see, we're listing all the different time zones. So the Tuesday one is at 5 p.m. The Friday one is at 9 a.m. And these are all in Pacific time, but if you look at the other time zones, you can see if you're in a different part of the world besides Los Angeles, then this would be when you would be able to attend these other swaps. And these swaps involve, as I mentioned, pairing up with one other person and spending 1 week reading their script and giving them feedback on it. We have Writer's Voice as well, which is prose readings from novels, short stories, nonfiction, poems, or things like this. Saturday, 7 p.m., so there's one tomorrow night, and there's another Thursday at 10 a.m. Table reads are 3 times a week, and these are live readings of your complete feature or pilot scripts. This is one of our most popular and biggest events every week. We have 3 of them, Sunday 2 p.m., Tuesday 11 a.m., and Saturday is 1 a.m. Pacific time, which if you're in Los Angeles is kind of crazy that you would go to, but you can if you really want to. Ultimately, that one is intended for our international students in all kinds of time zones all across the world. We have some upcoming free classes besides just this one. So this is our rewrite crash course, I guess you'd call it. Coming up, we have week 1 of our Feature Bootcamp, which is open to everybody, even if you were not able to attend the week 0, which is like the overview preparatory class for an upcoming bootcamp. So we have the kind of week 0 just to lay the groundwork, the foundation for what we're doing, and answer those initial questions and give just a little bit of initial feedback. Week 1 is going to be also free and open to everybody. You can come by there to get that feedback on your initial version of your logline if you already have a logline. If you don't already have a logline, then it's a great place to go just to learn the basics, get those simple questions answered, and get your ducks in a row as we move ahead through the 8-week feature writing course. We have TV Pilot Bootcamp as well, starting April 7th. We have that intro class that is going to be from our time slots are on Friday from 6 to 8 and on Sunday from 10 to noon in Pacific time. So that's the feature and TV writing classes coming up. We have Novel Bootcamp starting up too very soon. We will be doing one more one-off class in WordCamp next week. We'll be doing a romance writing class, but after that we will be getting into week 1 of our Novel Bootcamp starting in the middle of this month, so I think on the 20th, 12 to 2 p.m. on Saturdays on WordCamp, and that'll take you all the way writing a complete draft of a brand new novel. And then we do have one more brand new, completely never taught before class, which is writing adaptations. That's going to be April 14th, also on WordCamp, which is our novel server. Wait a minute, sorry, that's actually a Sunday. Nacho, do you have the time for that one? Is that going to be during the normal bootcamp Sunday time? Are you there, Nacho? Oh, he might be having some mic trouble. He hopped into a different server. That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be 10 a.m. on Sunday, April 14th.
On the 14th. Okay, great. So that'll be in the normal bootcamp slot, so 10 to noon on Sunday. Thank you for that. Okay, so that's a bunch of just free stuff coming up. You don't have to subscribe for any of that. That was just Nacho you heard, by the way. He's our co-founder who also teaches many different events and workshops and classes on the server. We, of course, will always have these bootcamps on a cycling basis, meaning that when one finishes, another one will be starting usually within a week or two. So if you fall behind, it's okay. You're not going to get kicked out or anything like that. There's no grades. There's no actual obligation for you to be keeping up with the milestones of the course unless you really want to, but some find that just the deadline, having that really concrete date set in stone is just useful for them in their organization process in whatever way. So you never have to hit those deadlines, but we will be checking in every week, and you can tell us about your progress and what you've learned and questions that you have and things like that. So there's a great value in continuing to attend the bootcamp sessions to make sure that you are on the right track. You can see a bunch of other dates for stuff that we have coming up here, including UI design and coding Discord bots on CodeCamp. We have getting started with Premiere and Resolve. That's video editing. That's also going to be April 14th. So the same day as that adaptations class, later at 5 p.m. on Film Camp, we do have that brand new editing course. And then you can see the dates for the ongoing boot camps and advanced labs here on the right. So you get a lot by subscribing. If you look in the chat right now, you'll see a poll that Nacho's just posted, which indicates all the different programs coming up. You can press one of those numbers if you're interested in that class, even if you haven't yet signed up. And you can also click on I have more questions or anything like that if you'd just like to know more. So take a look at that by clicking on the white word bubble on the classroom channel and clicking that small button that says Open Chat. You'll be able to open it on the right side of your Discord window. If you're watching on a different service like YouTube or Twitch, we're glad to have you. It just usually takes a minute or two for us to actually see your comments. We don't always see them right away. So you can sign up by going to scriptcamp.net/classes and buying a course on its own if you really want to, but you'll get a ton of value out of simply subscribing. If you become an unlimited subscriber, just $19 a month if you're subscribing yearly, you get access to every single thing on every server, every class, every workshop, every swap. Okay, so let's start at the top with our discussion tab. So maybe we'll open the floor to the room and you can tell us what is it that you were trying to rewrite? Do you know what you have to fix? Have you already gotten feedback? How many drafts have you done? What is it that you're hoping to improve and how? Any questions like this, or maybe you're totally lost and you have no idea where to start, and that's fine to share as well. But we'll take raised hands if anybody wants to speak up and tell us about your project and what you're hoping to accomplish in the course, and any initial questions that you might have. Let's start with Dakota.
Hello, how are you all doing?
Hey, Dakota, doing great. How's everything with you?
Fantastic. Fantastic. It's been a wonderful day. Yay. I've been looking forward to this, honestly. So, I am in the process of doing a second draft of a feature script. I know what I need to fix. I've been going to table reads, and there's been several people have been giving feedback. In terms of what I need to fix, a lot of it is some story beats that I might need to flesh out, some things I might need to trim. But the thing I'm really focusing on in the second draft is developing the main character more and also dialogue. I really only want to focus on two things, because if I try to tackle everything, it's just not going to happen. Because, I know that, that's what multiple drafts are for. I think it's always good to have a specific goal for a draft and not try to tackle everything all at once. So character development and dialogue, those are my two main things.
Great. Okay. It seems like you have a clear idea of what you need to do. Wow, that was the loudest motorcycle that has ever existed that just drove right past my window. So have you done any rewrites in the past, or is this your first revision of a feature?
This is my first revision that I've done in a while. It's been a long time since I've actually sat down to rewrite anything. So I have some idea as to what to do. Like, I know to, gather the feedback, go through the script, go through the scene cards, basically re-outline. And then after that, I'm like, okay, now what?
I'm glad you asked.
Sure.
And it seems like at least you have some idea of the basic steps, like gathering the feedback first. You don't want to start rewriting while you're still getting feedback and like hearing all these conflicting voices and things like this. And it seems like
Right.
you have a good idea of like the objectives that you want to accomplish in each rewrite, which is also good. We want to make a really strong plan for moving into a rewrite. So you have some of the cornerstones down already, and we can cover all the other steps to fill in the gaps that you have left behind.
Sure. Sounds fantastic.
Great. Any big questions before we dunk you back in the audience?
Sure. So I guess the main question is, so when you're starting to kind of think about, okay, there's something in my first draft that I really, really like, and I want to keep it. But are there other things that I need to also keep? Like, how do you know what you need to keep? I know that's probably a super objective question, but it's like, okay, I have all this feedback and I know kind of what I need to do with it, but but there has to be something that I can keep somewhere. How do you discern what those things are?
Great question. And it's not an easy answer, but I think since you said you did a readings and getting feedback is often going to be just the first thing that you do. Or one of those first things that you do to just make sure, just kind of feel out what's working and what's not. If something got a big laugh in a reading or something like that, then you know there might be something there, even if you maybe lost a little confidence in it. Just going by the feedback and responses that you're getting will be really, really key to you. I mean, if people laugh at something, they laugh at it. There's no, you can't even argue that moment doesn't work if it accomplishes its basic emotional objective, right? So during that initial feedback phase, you will find some things here and there. Like, it's important to write, if it's a comedy especially, write down where did people laugh, or smile at least, or chuckle, or anything. You're looking for those sort of unconscious reactions that just kind of prove that moment is working. Like, no matter what anyone says, I saw the physical proof with my own eyes that it is working. So that's the first thing to do, is just simply get that response and be able to judge and start to figure out the stuff that is clearly and obviously working. Now, there might be some stuff that isn't working yet, but it could work, and even if it didn't get a great response in the read or something like that, you have to like kind of default back to just your own intuition and your own experience with this, and like stuff that you like more, it matters. Like, it's not just trivial, the fact that you just saying, well, I want it in the movie because I like it. you like it for a reason. You might want to ask, like, why exactly do I like it? Or could I accomplish that with a different moment or with a different scene? Or could I still get that same effect even if I change something? That might require a little bit of extra footwork and sort of negotiation with yourself and with your co-writers or anyone else that's working on it. If you feel that it still has the potential to accomplish its intended effect and you really want to see it succeed. So I would say the moments that are working and the moments that you're really rooting for are the things that you should really highlight and write down and mark down. And even if the one you're rooting for doesn't work, then when you go back to the drawing board, when you go into your re-outline, you can sort of put a big circle around it and either discuss with your co-writer or just, in your own mind. You can ask, is there another way that I can accomplish this goal? Or ask the question, what isn't working about it? And how can I go about solving those goals in a really sort of just straightforward, methodical way? So I'm going about this as a real planner and architect who is, making a very concrete roadmap for every step of the way. And I would say, in terms of what do you actually keep, stuff that's obviously working and stuff that you really want it to work are just the priorities. If it wasn't working and you don't even care that much, then there's no reason to keep it in the script.
Super, super helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the good question. All right, let's ask anyone else wants to raise a hand. Tell us what your goal is, what you're hoping to rewrite, questions that you have, tactics you have for rewriting, or anything else you want to share. You can use either the raise hand button, and I can call on you to speak aloud using your mic, or you can weigh in using the text chat, which you can again find by clicking the white word bubble on the Classroom channel that opens the text window on the right-hand side of your Discord pane. Anyone else? There's so many people here. No one wants to tell us what you're rewriting? Dan, there we go. I will torment one more poor soul. Hi, Dan, go ahead.
Hello. I was thinking of rewriting the screenplay that I had shared. What was it, last week now?
Yeah, you did a reading.
Okay, no, just this weekend. It has been that long, hasn't it? And it's, well, I don't know if I want to rewrite yet, but I definitely want to keep this information in mind for when I go back into it, so that next time the characters, feel like characters.
Okay.
I guess it was one of the big...
Did you get a lot of good feedback during the reading?
Was that?
Did you get a lot of feedback during the reading?
I did.
Great. Okay.
It'll be very helpful.
Great. Okay. So it seems like if you've already gotten some feedback, then you'll have a big head start. You already know some of the issues to address, and now you can start making a plan for how you'll do it.
Yes.
Awesome. And so you're going to rewrite for characters. Anything else?
Well, I don't want to say it out loud, but male gaze issues.
Okay. So, like, the way that certain scenes are portrayed, or the way that the audience would...
Yeah, they're portrayed. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly go into bodily details of individuals, but I can kind of see where people are coming from.
Okay, well, these are good things to note and good things to address in rewrites, definitely. Tone, descriptions of characters, all of that really matters. Any questions or issues or things you're wondering about?
I don't think so far. I'll see what this session will juice my memory with.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
We have a comment in the chat. Vivian says, I'm going to be rewriting State of a Fair after I'm done with this anthology. If I remember correctly, I think that was a horror comedy set at a carnival or like a state fair park kind of thing. I could have that mixed up with someone else, though. Oh, she says correct. Great. Awesome. So yeah, nice mix of different genres and different types of projects. That's always great to see. Anyone else, feel free to speak up if you'd like to share. Otherwise, I can continue to the next slides and I'll check the text if anyone else has weighed in on whatever it is that they're working on. Okay, I don't see any other hands at the moment, so I'm going to keep going, but feel free to still type in the chat if you would like to introduce yourself or tell us what you're working on or hoping to accomplish. Okay, so you're going to have to get feedback if you want to do a strong rewrite. If you don't yet have feedback, again, today is a great time to get a partner for the upcoming swap. You want to try to get notes from at least 2 different people by the next class, Friday, April 12th for Feature Bootcamp or April 21st for TV Bootcamp. And that gives you a couple weeks to sort out who's going to be reading and what kind of feedback are they going to be giving, how long are they going to have, all those kind of basic logistical questions, which, you know, that it can be so tough to get someone to just sit down and agree to read this and comment on this. So it's no easy feat sometimes to find those folks, but you're going to have to just look at your peer group, look at your friends and family. Swaps and events like that are a great way to find those partners, but they will not guarantee you a partner, so you do have to put in the legwork sometimes. We have table reads 3 times a week and swaps twice a week, as we mentioned in the announcements, so there's lots of chances to see other students' work. Other people around your level are a great resource for you to connect with and also be able to then learn as they learn and grow as they grow and help each other out and form writing groups and all these things that are so necessary for your networking, especially in this sort of, you know, post-COVID world where nobody wants to go out to bars or whatever anymore. Now it is so essential to be able to do this online and to meet others that are trying to do the same sorts of stuff that you are in the same kinds of ways that you are, and you can all collaborate and form friendships and partnerships and all these things from there. So communities like this, or like Script Hive, or like Reddit or Tumblr or Facebook or any of these things are great resources for you to start to find those collaborators to, you know, go through this terrifying, impossible industry with. You can also post your script in the feedback channel, which we have on both WordCamp and ScriptCamp, so you can post a script there with answering a few questions as to what is the page count and genre and things like this. It requires a logline and basic stuff like that, but you will be able to at least solicit the widest net of feedback possible. You're not guaranteed to get that feedback, though, which is why the swaps and things like that are designed to be a little bit more oriented towards getting you those results in a quick time frame. As an unlimited member, you do get $100 off of consultations with me, too, if you want to get my notes. You don't have to get my notes, and most people don't, and that's fine. But that's just an option if you are interested. So before we go in, let's just go over some of the basics here. I think that if you're spending a long time rewriting a single script over and over and over, this is really, really common with people that are just starting out, but it's really, really rare to find this amongst working professionals because, first of all, if no one is paying you to rewrite your script, you might just want to simply consider moving on to the next project after draft 3 or 4. I really recommend don't go above about 3 or 4 drafts on most things because you're going to hit a point of diminishing returns where after a while you're really just not improving it exponentially anymore. You're just rearranging the deck chairs, the furniture, or things like this. And because of that, it's going to actually work against you a little bit to get too stuck in the weeds on any one project. It's your job to sort of write a bunch of bad scripts to get to the good ones. So maybe consider, if you have this inclination to make everything a passion project, you need to step back from that and realize that not everything can be a passion project. Because if you're equally passionate, like intensely passionate about every single thing you do, it's going to be pretty tough to work in Hollywood when you're not every single thing you work on can be your own personal passion project. There's so many compromises. There's so much working for other people and taking notes and changing the story. And I mean, we're asking for millions of dollars here, potentially. Like, these are multi-million-dollar companies. A movie's a multi-million-dollar company. You do not get sole control as an amateur of a multi-million-dollar company. You're going to have to compromise and listen to, take orders from a lot of different people on this. Meaning that you have to kind of relinquish that overbearing control, that sense of ownership over every single thing you do. I would recommend practice a bunch of scripts that you aren't that invested in and are just kind of a fun idea that will keep you interested and excited to keep working on that one story for just the 6 to 8 weeks you're going to take to write it. And then give yourself the freedom to say, this is what I learned from that, but I don't have to rewrite this obsessively. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not trying to sell this, and I don't expect this to carry the weight of my career or my aspirations or my hopes or me doing justice to this historical atrocity or something that has very high stakes. You should be writing a lot of scripts with that lower set of stakes of, wouldn't it be cool if there were a movie about it, I don't know, a whale that goes to the moon. Just pick something fun and interesting and exciting that will just get you to write it through to the end. Do your very best. Maybe do another draft or 2 if you really want to. You don't have to. And then after draft 3, you say, I've done my best, I've done all I can, time to move on to the next idea, because you will almost always learn more by writing that next script rather than by getting obsessed with some passion project, because no matter how many drafts you do, your first couple scripts will not usually be all that good, and you're not an exception to that, and that's okay. You can always come back and take another try with some amazing idea later if you think, I only have one idea. I only ever want to write this Civil War movie about the Union versus the Confederacy to do justice to my great-grandfather Ulysses S. Grant, or whatever it is, and maybe you think you have this overwhelming need to tell one specific story or one kind of story, but you will get lots of chances, and you can't rely on just this one idea to like carry your whole career forward. You're not just one story. You have to sort of become this generator of unlimited stories in order to be the sort of employable writer that Hollywood is kind of looking to hire. Right now, they're not really looking to hire anyone, considering the industry is at a like legendarily terrible place right now. But now is the time to sort of work on those skills, to work on these skills of taking and addressing notes, organizing feedback, approaching a rewrite with a clear strategy in mind, and all these things that will just lead to these more productive results rather than just opening a finished script and just messing around and just changing stuff here and there as you kind of feel like it. You need to go into this with just as much of a process and a sense of building a strong foundation and then building on that foundation step by step from sketchbook to logline to story beats to scene cards all the way up to pages. We sort of do a similar thing with rewrites where we have those same steps that we go through each time, check one thing off the list at a time, and then by the end you'll actually have that definitive new draft. It won't just be like, well, I changed a bunch of lines and I did my best, I guess this is draft 2. You will say, this is my set of goals for draft 2. Now that I've accomplished them all, I can definitively title this draft 2. I'm going to check the chat really quick and just make sure I haven't missed anyone's comments. Dakota's left us with a Billy Wilder quote, if you have a problem with the third act, the real problem is in the first act. A lot of the time that is the case, yeah. If you are running into problems later, it's often because you haven't laid adequate foundation or you haven't worked at supporting the story properly or built setting up the proper motivations or something like this. A lot of the time, third act problems are the root, or they are rooted in first act problems. Let me see. Rishu asks, do we have a web series script bootcamp? That's a really good question. I think you're the first person to ever ask about that. We haven't done that in the past before. We've done short film bootcamp, which was, I think, 4 weeks to write a whole short film. That's kind of close. That's in the video library if you're a member, so you can go review that if you sign up. But besides that, no, we've never done web series specifically. That's kind of an interesting thought, though. I would like to get someone that specializes in web series or who has made a couple before, who would be able to really speak to that, but that is a good topic. We can definitely keep that in mind. Natra also mentions we have a sketch comedy workshop that meets from time to time. It's not incredibly consistent, but it's probably like twice a month, I think, is when it meets. But yeah, that might also fit into the sort of same type of writing if it's in the comedic short form. Let me see, have I missed anything else? Dakota also says, I wrote one script over and over, 15 drafts, and rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and it destroyed my creativity for years. I did learn something. I learned how not to write. Yeah, there you go. I always say there are these 3 major things that you need to be doing to be improving as a writer, and those things are reading. Number 1, you need to be reading professional work. I say 3 scripts a week. You can get away with 1 script a week if you absolutely must, but it should be 1 script a week, bare minimum. You should be writing, meaning whatever it is that you're interested in, you should be making as many of those things as you can, like trying to get through, and doing your best and being consistent. It doesn't have to be a lot every day, but you are consistently writing in some form or another. And then the third thing, besides reading and writing, the third thing is moving on, which can mean a couple different things. Moving on is ideally framed as the choice to move on once you've accomplished all your goals and you've written an awesome script, 3 or 4 drafts, and you're ready to go and shoot it or send it off or enter a contest or whatever it is. You're really happy with it. But if it's not moving on because of that, you're moving on because of something else, right? You're moving on because I've been stuck on this story too long, and now I need to keep improving and I need to keep being creative and building my skills. So I'm just going to abandon sounds like a harsh word to some people. How about this? I'm going to put it in the freezer. I'm going to put it on ice. And later, if I want to, I can pull it back out and defrost it and everything else like that. But for now, you are putting it on ice and you are going to the next thing. And maybe you'll learn so much from the next thing that it will be easy to rewrite that first thing later. Maybe you'll learn enough that you'll say, oh, now I can clearly see the process and I know exactly where I went wrong, and now I have a better idea of how to approach rewriting the first thing. Or maybe you'll learn so much that you'll look back at the first and you'll go, oh gosh, that would be such a mess and a pain to even attempt to break into. I'm just going to make a clean break from it and move on to the next thing. And that's fine. You don't have to rewrite everything. Not everything's going to be a masterpiece. And your first, I don't know, 24 scripts will probably not sell. Like, it's so hard. There's so many scripts you have to write. So many people approach this thinking like, okay, well, if I get one script good enough, though, if I get it just right, then it has to get made. Like, or else what am I doing? I have one story that I want to do. I have one story that I need to tell, or I have like 2 or 3, and then once I get those out of my system, then I'll have made it, and I'll be making money, and I'll be a professional. It takes years of continuing to read, write, and move on, those 3 steps, even after you've gotten to the point where you're writing scripts that are placing highly in contests, scoring 8s in the blacklist, placing in quarterfinals or semifinals of even major contests like Nicholl, Austin, or any of the others, or even major fellowships. You could get multiple mentorship programs, and you could still take years after that before you're ready to actually sign any kind of deal, set up a script anywhere, make a sale, get staffed, anything else. It can potentially take years after you've gotten to the point where you can consistently write really good scripts, which takes a long time and a lot of work. So I just say all this, I bring all this up just to say, don't get too attached to any one script that you're working on. Your ideas might seem amazing and so unique and awesome to you, and they are in their own way. You shouldn't dislike your own ideas. Of course, you should have that kind of like healthy level of arrogance in liking your own stuff, because if you don't like it, obviously, how can you ask other people to like it? You have to like your own stuff and think it's awesome, and maybe think it could win an Oscar or anything else. But with the difficult and challenging realities of making movies and getting paid to make movies, it is overwhelmingly difficult, and you are doing it at what some people say is the worst time in history to be breaking into this. So take some pressure off of yourself to get to that. Any project needs to be perfect, needs to sell, needs to get you repped, needs to get set up somewhere, needs to get a director attached. None of your projects need to do any of that. And while the industry is in this kind of latent period of, I would say, recession and dormancy to some extent, this is the time to be reading a lot and writing a lot and building those skills so that by the time the industry really, gets back on its feet more, you will have everything necessary to be employable as a writer. You'll have a fantastic portfolio, and you will have the skills that you've built up over many, many, many scripts to be able to act not as just the writer for that one project, but the writer for many projects, and a generator of unlimited ideas. Okay, so let me just check the chat really quick. I saw some comments and questions here. Question from TQ. What are the percentages that each part of a story should take up overall across all the acts? Okay, sure. So first act is about 25%. The second act is about 50%. Third act, 25%. Super easy, clear, concise numbers when it comes to feature writing. When is the video editing bootcamp scheduled? Is there any link or pages that can follow? So the video editing bootcamp is going to be started April 14th at 5 p.m. on Film Camp. Let's see what else. Carmen says, I'd like to get my feedback 1 page at a time. I guess that would take a long time. The best way to do that is here on our server in the Writers Lab channel, which is every Saturday and Friday. We had one this morning from 12 to 2, and we have one Saturdays from 4 to 6. Unlimited members can come and bring up to 5 pages of whatever they want for feedback from me and from the other members of the lab, if they want to get feedback from the other members of the lab. And that's going to be just up to 5 pages at a time. So every week, if you're a member, you can just get 5 pages sequential feedback through the whole script if you want. But normally, unless you have a writing group that has some sort of rule or agreement in that we are always reading a page a week, or we're reading, some smaller amount of pages per week. Normally, the way reading and feedback is going to work is you finish the entire script, you give somebody the entire script, they read the whole thing, they give you notes on the whole thing. That's how it works most of the time, but writing groups can be an exception. Okay, and TQ says, makes sense. I keep trying to add more meat to second act. I just read it and it feels so short. Okay, well that would definitely be in your goals then for your rewrite. Fleshing out Act 2, making sure Act 2 is fulfilling all of its structural beats and intentions as well as you can. We will get into a little bit in just a moment here how to actually approach the rewrites. Let me pause where we are and just ask, do we have any other questions before we continue? Okay, if there's no more questions, I do see someone's typing, so feel free to keep typing in the chat. I'll check back in a little while. But if not, then we will look at overview. So let's look at the steps of the rewrite. Steps of the rewrite. This is the 8-week kind of rewrite plan. You don't have to follow exactly this, but so normally we break our feature bootcamp writing course into 8 weeks. The first 4 weeks are planning, meaning week 1 is sketchbook and logline. Week 2, you finalize logline and move ahead to story beats. Week 3 is you start your scene cards, and week 4 is you finalize scene cards and you start pages. Then weeks 4 through 8 are simply moving through the script, writing 10 to 20 pages a week, or maybe up to 25-ish pages a week. With the rewrite, we are still doing it in a kind of similar way. The first 4 weeks are all planning. We don't change a single word in the script. You don't write a single word in the script or in screenplay format until the halfway mark. You have 4 weeks just to figure out exactly what you want to change and why and how. And then the second half, weeks 4 through 8, are going to be that rewrite and the extra passes. Extra passes being a sort of, after you've accomplished an entire rewrite through, you've gotten all the major scenes there, it says the end at the end. You can then go through you can comb through the script additional times for just one area of focus individually. So just the dialogue, or just the character arcs, just the action scenes, or whatever it is that you think just needs that extra level of individual attention. So week 1, you want to get that feedback and then assemble your notes document. This is going to be where you want to get those reads and get the responses from either verbally getting responses from your people giving you feedback, meaning that you'll have to take the notes yourself, or if you're getting written notes, you'll have to copy and paste those just to all in one document, which we call the notes document. That's going to be where you aggregate all the responses and notes that you've gotten, and you can sort them by provider, or you can sort them by size of note, like size of change from big to small, or you can sort them sort of chronologically through the script. I find it's easiest to sort of start thinking chronologically eventually. But to begin with, you want to just gather and aggregate all those notes in the same place. In the same document. They should not be in a bunch of different sticky notes all over everything. We want one document called feedback document. Week 2 is going to be your re-outline. So you actually have to go through the version of the script that you have, the draft that you ended up with, and you have to write an outline for that script. Not the thing you hoped for and not what you want to change, but you're simply making a new set of scene cards that reflect what you ended up with. You can copy and paste a fair amount of your old scene cards if it all matches up pretty well to your original intentions. But even if it doesn't, you want to include, even if there's scenes that don't work at all, maybe you say pages 68 to 69, a really boring scene where the main character sits around and talks about nothing. Even if that's what you ended up with, you have to put that in your re-outline. You're trying to get a really clear bird's eye view of what you have. You're not trying to make any major changes or plan. The re-outline is so you can see a truncated, simplified version of the entire story. Okay, that's the re-outline. Then moving ahead into the revision guide, you're going to sort of combine these two documents together, the notes document and the re-outline. So you're going to make copies of both to make sure that you're not re-editing over anything. And you're going to create this third new thing called the revision guide, where you take your re-outline, and then you have all the notes that you want to consider and think about moving into the story. And you will then be able to sort of click and drag them in or copy and paste them in. So you have a complete view of the whole story. You have like a table of contents for the whole story, and then you will be able to move in all the additions and changes that you'll want to make. You can highlight them a little differently as well. We can get into color coding and things like that once we get to the just kind of on the page version of, or on the page section of the outlining process, or the re-outline process. But the thing is, you want to have that, the re-outline provides you that really nice chronological overview of the whole story, and then each of the notes, which you can click and drag in exactly where you want to make those changes. You can make a really clear roadmap and plan for yourself for what I'm going to change and where things are going to go, what's moving where, what do I need to cut, what is perfect as it is, and what needs some work. So I'll show you when we get to the coding section, or the color coding part, how I keep track of all of that, but you can, of course, always be working on creating your own method and shorthand for all of this. Nacho has left a comment in the chat, which is very helpful. Thank you for that, Nacho. So you can host a live table read of your complete feature or pilot on Script Camp, which we mentioned we have a couple chances for every week. You can get one of those by using our sort of internal server currency called Script Coins, which I know is kind of silly. It's like, what is this, Chuck E. Cheese? What am I, earning tokens to get a stuffed animal? You kind of are. I mean, you can earn Script Coins by providing feedback in the feedback channels or participating in writing prompts or other activities. It doesn't if you just do a fair amount of feedback, it doesn't take that long to build up coins. So You can, by providing feedback, you will get the opportunity to solicit more feedback from the group and cast a wider net. Okay, where were we? So this is the overview of the steps of the rewrite process. The first 3 weeks, which I just covered, is going to take you from feedback to re-outline to revision guide. And then when you start week 4, that is when it's almost like starting pages again, because you're going to start from a blank new screenwriting document, which can be kind of scary if you're like, it took me a year of my life to write an entire script in screenplay format. How could I start with a new blank page? It actually helps a fair amount with clearing away those kind of mental cobwebs and those that sense of everything is stuck as it is and I can't change it. Starting a brand new document completely blank from the very beginning is going to be really helpful for you. And it's not to say that you can't copy and paste in scenes or lines or moments that were working fine in the previous draft, but beyond that, you should allow that sort of mental space for yourself to make new connections between scenes, or to draw new aspects out of scenes before, or even by sort of rewriting a scene that you have written before. You can still copy and paste things in when you want, but giving yourself just more room to experiment and try new stuff and to connect ideas in a new way can just be really useful. When you look at the whole thing that looks so perfect and you spent so long on it, it can just feel hard to start taking pieces out of it and watching the whole thing fall apart. So start with a blank new document. It just opens you up. It will help. It helps a lot. Okay, so those are the major steps. I'm going to go into more details on each of these and sort of talk about getting feedback and how do you sort of organize that feedback and pick which notes you're going with and which ones you do not care about. Before we do, let me just pause. Any quick questions before we dive in? Carmen, go ahead. Hi, Carmen. Can you hear us? Can you hear me okay? So we're not getting sound from your mic. You might be on push-to-talk mode, or it looks like you might be on a phone. Maybe you've muted your mic. Maybe try a different device or reconnecting. Looks like she's reconnecting. Okay, I will keep going, and then if Carmen is able to rejoin and ask her question, she's free to do that. She says I'm having tech problems. Okay. Feel free to hop back on whenever you're able to, Carmen. So let's move ahead into feedback. So you can open Google Docs and make a new document and simply just title this name of script and notes. And this is going to be like the gathering place for all of the feedback you've received. Nothing doesn't get included here. This is anyone who reads the work at all or has any response to it, it can all go here. You can label it by person or by date or by group or by reading or by size of note or like, you know, complexity of note or anything else like that if you really want to. Carmen, I'll re-invite you back up if you're able to try to speak, but it's totally cool if you can't. Hello?
Hi, everyone. My question is, when is the next feature boot camp?
When is the next feature bootcamp? So yeah, let's rewind to our schedule here. So our new feature
I haven't
bootcamp.
been able to. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I haven't been able to access the events for some reason.
That's okay.
I have a lot of different connections going on my devices right now. So it's Fridays at 6 p.m. like starting today, because it's, what time is it?
Starting the 7th. So that's
Next Friday. Oh, okay. That's why you said that to have the script done by like April 7th.
April 12th.
12th.
Oh, April.
Okay, thank you, Nasha.
Okay, so April 12th is the actual start date of the next feature class?
Correct.
Or that, and is that also the day where we're supposed to have our scripts done?
No. Yes, you should be finished already before we start. No.
Okay.
Just to have your feedback if you're doing a rewrite, just to get feedback before.
Yeah, I do have a question about, I'm not sure if this falls into rewriting Okay, oh gosh. When, if you feel like, because like I'm on page 87 and I feel like I can't really flesh any more out without going way off the narrative into like a completely different thing. And then of course you have to answer for everything that you write. So you don't have like loose ends or like unexplored threads and stuff like that, right? So I don't want to like invent things. So with this genre that I have, this supernatural crime drama, am I okay around 87, 88, 89 pages? Because I don't want to just keep adding things that are unnecessary, because I've been taking stuff out too, you know? Mhm. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Super. It's okay. It's not a thriller though. It's a drama. Yeah, because that's what we decided. Well, I took your word for it because I usually do. And you said supernatural crime drama, so I thought, okay, it has to be around 100 pages then, right? That's what my mind is thinking. So it doesn't have to. Okay. Uh, oh, okay. Oh, okay, okay, great. So, okay, so yeah, I'll just wait on the other things. So what? Okay, just one thing. If I do, I want to do the table reading because that's really like the thing that I like to do. I mean, it's fun and everything. So if I do the table reading, and get I can just be like, okay, everybody, I need suggestions for any way that this thing can be expanded that my mind cannot see, right? And then maybe I could get suggestions like that, right, from other people. And oh, well, what if this and that kind of thing, right? Because right now, like, I can't see any other way to expand this thing, but maybe there's something I don't see, right?
Sure, yeah, you can. So after a reading, you can solicit specific feedback. You can always ask questions like, "What did you guys think of the pacing?" or "What did you guys think of the characters?" or were there any characters that were annoying?" or something like that. You can have specific questions, or you can always just open it up and say, "What did you guys think?" Like, I'm open to whatever feedback you have.
Okay, 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 thanks.
Sure. Thanks for the questions. Yeah, usually good to go into reading sessions like that with at least some idea of the questions you want to ask, like the general areas that you feel you're not 100% sure about. But even if not, it's always totally fine to just throw yourself on the mercy of the crowd or whatever. Any other questions before we continue? Okay, if not, let's continue with feedback. So let's look at this question of how do you decide what actually matters? How do you evaluate your own script, right? The feedback that you're getting is from people that are trying to help. They would not have read your script and commented on that if they were not trying to help you. Unless you've, I don't know, enlisted your childhood bully or something like that, in which case maybe they are just trying to tear you down. But the point is, I would go into every feedback session with a lot of humility and a thick skin and the good faith to assume that everyone is also there in good faith. They're trying to give you whatever kind of expertise they have and to make the story the best that it can be. Not every feedback provider is I was going to say created equal. That's not true. You are created equal, but not every feedback provider is equally skilled and proficient in giving feedback. They don't always know what to look for. They may have never read a script in their life. They might be 14 years old and they want to just go on TikTok and play Fortnite all day or anything like that, right? So there's no actual telling, especially in a public table read, the quality of the feedback that you're going to get, and some feedback is better than others. Some is more spot on and more is better. Some people are better at assessing your intentions and determining whether or not you met those intentions or not. Some people will try to turn it into something that they would like. They'd be like, this romance would be better if one of the characters was a werewolf or something like that. But we have to ask this question, can the audience be wrong? Can the reader be wrong about these things? And the answer I've come to after much deliberation and thought is that no, the audience is never wrong, in the same sense that the customer is never wrong, right? They are sort of the customer. The audience is never wrong. They can be dumb, but not wrong. An audience member can be dumb, but not wrong, meaning that they're never wrong for having the response they gave you or for having the reaction that they had, unless they just weren't paying any attention at all. But we have to assume that good faith on their part, that they are reading, they are paying attention, and that they are trying to improve the document and the movie overall as best they can. But not everyone knows what to look for or what would make that better. They're giving you their feeling and their opinion. The feeling is always right. They can't be wrong about a feeling. They can read that and go, I was confused. They're not trolling you by saying they were confused. They actually were. But if they say, I was confused, you should have a voiceover at the beginning that explains it all, they might just be pulling that out of their ear, right? Like, they don't necessarily know what would make that better. They're not experts at your story. You're the expert at your story. So you have to kind of take everything in the spirit with which it is given. And even if you're like, this is one of those great challenges of being a screenwriter, is to be able to take all those ideas and opinions, and some of them you're like, wow, that's the dumbest thing I have literally ever heard. And internalize that and smile and say, okay, well, I'll see what I can do with that. Thank you for that. Or at the very least, say thank you for that. So no one's trying to wreck your script or harm you. And even if they are not providing you with a clearer course, you have to just... one of the grand difficulties of this is being able to sort of sift through this feedback and determine, first of all, does the audience member or reader actually have a clear sense of what I was trying to do? Are they in the target audience for this sort of story? Because if not, then you might imagine that, well, if they don't have the proper... like, me, for instance, I'm an instructor here. There's other instructors on this server that have a lot of experience in things like development of stories that would not always be our cup of tea, but we have the expertise to assess if it's working or not. But somebody might simply be, I don't know, they hate comedies. And they read a script and they're like, this is so trivial and like, this doesn't feel like it's saying very much about the world or anything like this. Their problem with the story might be their problem with comedies in general or something like that. You can't always know exactly where to draw those lines, and you can't dismiss anyone's feedback or opinions based on your assumptions of where they're coming from. But the best thing that we can look at, and the best metric you have to determine which notes am I going with and which ones am I ignoring, the stuff that comes up more than once from different readers, especially if they're different times and different sessions, different people reading on their own, coming back with the same conclusion, even if neither one has any kind of expertise. The fact that at least two of them have come together on anything is indicative of the idea that you should at least check that and pay attention to that and highlight that. So that's what I recommend doing in building your notes aggregation document. Highlight all the stuff that has come up at least more than one single time. If only one reader has said it, it's one person's opinion. But the second that somebody else agrees, then it is a note. Does that make sense? So you have to look at, like, we can't always assess every audience member individually, but we can assess very objectively what has come up multiple times. So yes, the audience can be dumb but not wrong. Highlight the stuff that comes up multiple times, and those are the things that you should really pay attention to and try your very best to address and feel like there is something going on here. It's not just me, and it's not just the one person. So in moving through your notes document, that is the best thing. I would just highlight it yellow, highlight it green, whatever it is that just indicates, pay extra attention to this, and then maybe you can find things that you think are dumb or don't make sense, and you can remove those. You don't have to include everything in your revision guide. I wouldn't delete any feedback from your notes document, but you don't need to include everything in the revision guide. You only want to take the stuff that you feel would really make the story better. Okay. Any questions on receiving feedback and determining which notes matter. Luke says, I'm in the camp of artists who have been criticized for their work bringing darkness into the world. That's a good review as a horror writer. You can put that on a poster. Sometimes you'll see, even nowadays, you'll sometimes see, like, quote from the Catholic Church, this movie should be burned. They put that on the advertising for the horror movie. Okay, if there's no more questions on receiving feedback and determining which notes matter, then I hope everybody has a good understanding of what to look for and how to tell which voices to sort of filter out more than others. But again, audience, not wrong, just dumb, potentially. How do you diagnose your script problems? Well, this is a big question that is going to really require you to read a lot of scripts and write a lot of scripts and study what makes scripts work and study storytelling. Read novels and just become a dedicated student of the craft of storytelling, which is so expansive. It has so many schools of thought and so many worldwide traditions and different cultural viewpoints on, and so many different styles and approaches and everything else. There's a lot of different ways of looking at this. But in studying the sort of cornerstones of storytelling, these things often come up, and these are often used as a kind of rubric in evaluating 3-act Hollywood-style feature film scripts. We have premise and concept, plot and structure, pace, character, dialogue, prose and formatting, which are kind of later. These are kind of like lower priority. And then last we have genre and tone. These are kind of the major sections of a script that you can look at in evaluation, that it's so sort of standardized that you'll be able to find things like the Verve Coverage Guide, which is a quite well-circulated PDF in Hollywood that includes a bunch of instructions for interns at the Verve agency as they go through and evaluate, hundreds and hundreds of scripts off the slush pile. It gives them the kind of things to look for, the criteria in which they will be grading and evaluating in terms of pass, consider, or recommend, which are the normal sort of values that are determined in coverage. This is sort of like the basics of how people look at script evaluation. Let's go through one at a time. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each one because we want to make sure we leave room for our arranging swap partners today if we can. But I will at least touch on the basics of this and give you some ideas for how to evaluate if any of these individual things are working. Of course, your readers will have given you their feedback on this. After you've gotten all of that feedback, you have to provide your own sort of notes and feedback as well, and you'll, of course, incorporate that into the revision guide, and that will help you sort of determine where each of the notes are going to go, like what specifically am I going to change, and which feedback will I take and which feedback will I ignore. So let's ask, how do we actually evaluate your own story in conjunction with the notes that you've gotten? Maybe the notes that you've gotten can help you determine if you've actually accomplished all the objectives and ticked all the boxes that you were trying to in this pass. So, premise and concept. The premise is just that basic question of what is this movie about? If a premise isn't working, then that means there's something mistuned in just the very basic, something's miscalibrated in just the very essentials of, like, this main character is trying to solve this problem and this is standing in the way. Like, if there's something wrong at that basic of a level, then you're going to have to do a pretty substantial rewrite, chances are, for the whole movie. But it's important to sort of assess this kind of thing early on, right? Is it simply an interesting concept? Maybe you've gotten feedback from your readers that are like, I ended up being into this, but at the beginning I was not looking forward to this. That's a sign that something in your just basic concept might be a little bit off, or the way you're presenting it maybe, or maybe the title is just making people think it will be something it's not, or anything else, maybe just like those early promises and the early expectations that you've set up in your story. Something is leading people astray. Almost any story can be interesting, so something's clearly off if even the very basic idea does not sound interesting to any of your readers. If you've heard that from multiple readers, something's really, really wrong with your movie. I didn't think this would be good. Is like a bad note to get. You don't want to hear that. But it's possible. It can happen. Maybe the idea just needs to be presented in a slightly different way, or maybe the way you pitch it to people or explain them or get them to read it needs to change a little bit, but there could be something fundamentally wrong with the premise. If your premise is something like, two guys sit in a I was going to say a phone booth. You can't fit two people in a phone booth. Two guys sit in the back of a bus and talk about life. That maybe could be a compelling movie, but on the premise alone, there's very few people that will sound interesting to. Just factually, there's not that many people that will be hooked by characters doing normal, day-to-day, boring stuff. Which is not to say there's no movies about that, or that it's impossible to show that in a movie or anything like that, but if the premise and concept don't sound interesting or exciting, something's wrong. Is this a concept that could attract talent, or does it have commercial appeal? Meaning, beyond just this basic question of, does that sound like something that I would want to watch and see? As a fan of the genre, you do have to take into account, of course, would a fan of the genre want to see this? Beyond the question of would anybody want to see this, right? You have to ask, kind of, would this attract talent? Does this have commercial appeal? Meaning that, is this something a lot of people would want to see? If this is a movie about theoretical physicists discussing the finer points of lunar travel in a classroom setting, as all they do is mark out star charts on the chalkboard, maybe that's intriguing if you are really deep in science, but to an average audience member who doesn't even know what a quantum wormhole is or whatever, you may struggle to sort of communicate what makes that appealing to a large amount of people. In movies, you're asking for millions of dollars, so it has to feel like it's going to be appealing to a good amount of people. Does the script write to its concept, as in does it fully exploit its concept? Does it, and maybe exploit is sort of a negative, pejorative sounding word. Maybe we'll ask the question, does it utilize its concept and make best use of its concept? Meaning, does it actually do the thing that you promised that it would do, or does it feel like you sort of deceived the audience, and now you aren't even doing what we thought that we would be doing? We're not watching what you seem to be saying the story was going to be about. If, for instance, you've said this is going to be a legal drama about a werewolf. I always go to the werewolf. Let's make it a vampire. Legal drama about Dracula's getting sued, right? Dracula in the Courtroom is the name of our script. If most of that story is spent with other people outside of the courtroom, like the media talking about the case, or people theorizing about the Dracula case, or a character that gets inspired by the Dracula case to become a painter and paint what he thinks happens at the end of the court result, or something like that, it feels like your focus is not really clearly placed, or like your premise you haven't really explored your own premise, meaning that you have to either change how you're presenting what that premise is, or you have to go back and assess, I just need more scenes with Dracula on the stand, like calling witnesses and stuff like that. I need to do what it said on the box. High concept. Story driven by concept. This is not strictly necessary. Not every story needs to be high concept. What does high concept mean? The high concept means high reliance on concept to communicate and sell that idea. High concept does not mean more complicated. A lot of people seem to think high concept means more complicated, and I see why, because it sort of sounds like it means that. Like, oh, movies about space travel are so high concept, whatever it is. No, not really. High concept means high reliance on concept to sell the idea, meaning something that is self-contained and inherently interesting sounding in simply the arrangement of those characters in that situation. You know, if there's a guy that's trapped in a boat that's sinking, and he's a guy that's trapped in a boat with all of his exes, and it's slowly sinking, and he has only 2 hours a lifeboat can only fit 2 people, so he has to choose which of his exes he's going to take on the boat. That sounds kind of dumb, but you can see how something like that might be more of a high concept idea than a guy takes a boat trip and discusses life with the other passengers, right? We don't really say low concept. The sort of opposite of high concept is execution dependent. When you're getting feedback, you don't really have to focus on this that much unless your main goal is to write something that would definitely sell or something like that, if that's among your stated goals. But it can come up in just you're considering how you might present the story, how you might consider the basic elements in the premise that just lead to the entertaining situation that people are watching. It could be that if you are writing something that feels like it should be high concept, but then it's coming off as very execution dependent, then you might just throw your reader off and make them feel like, I don't know what I just read, or I don't know what the writer was trying to do, or something like that. So if you're pretty new at this, don't worry way too much about this high concept versus execution dependent thing, but it can definitely come up. And then last we have, is it true to its own genre? Like, does it feel like fans of the genre would get what they signed up for with this movie? If you write a horror movie that feels like it actually doesn't have any scary scenes, and it's mostly just people talking in rooms, you've goofed up a little bit. I mean, the genre requires the main character is scared, the main character's life is in danger, the stakes are life and death, there's monsters and serial killers and vampires and everything else, right? Like, we want to be scared by stuff in a horror movie. There's no way around it. Everyone's now just talking about Dracula being sued. Bleeding the witness. That's clever, Nacho. Well done. Okay, so, yeah, anyone, feel free to write Dracula getting sued if you want to. But these are the sort of things we look at in premise and concept. Does it feel like a fan of the movie or a fan of this genre would be excited to watch that, and by watching it, they would feel like the writer they gave it their absolute best to deliver the sorts of thrills that I was looking for in that movie. If any of those things are not true, something might be off with the premise or the very basics of the premise and concept, and you need to really go back to the drawing board and you rewrite it. Okay, let's keep going. Plot and structure. So this is where you're going to get the majority of your notes. Like I would maybe say 50% of your notes are going to be on stuff like this, especially if you're just getting going, because these are really tricky to kind of internalize and grasp. These principles of how do you structure and pace a 100-page story, in which that's like 40 to 50, maybe 60 scenes. And each of them needs to be compelling and interesting and have a main character trying to do something with obstacles in the way. They have tactics that they switch between as they attempt to get that thing. They change tactics as their initial tactics fail. They readjust. They accomplish their goal or they don't. They are emotionally impacted by that moment, and we transition smoothly and logically into the next scene. You have to do that 50 times in a row in a full feature, right? It's not easy. It's not easy to write a full, coherent movie, and very few people can do it. Very few people can even finish a script. So if you are finishing scripts, you are already above, I would say, about 75% of people that are, quote, interested in screenwriting. So if you're finishing stuff at all and getting to the point where you're like, it's time to rewrite, you are already ahead of the pack. So if you're here, chances are you are more committed to this than most. In fact, you've been in this class for more than an hour, so you are more committed than most people. That's great. Don't lose that. Hold on to that. But plot and structure are really tough to get right, especially if you haven't read a trillion scripts. You haven't watched a million movies of your own genre and with these conventions in this subgenre. If you don't know exactly what the other movies that are like this, how they work, where does the catalyst happen, how long do we spend in each act, these questions are all very difficult to wing or to guess at. You can't just wing it with plot and structure. So we have to ask these major questions. I'm not going to go over every single one, but for instance, does each act feel like it's majorly accomplishing the objectives that it should be? We have a maybe inherent understanding or maybe a more studied understanding, depending on your reader, of what each part of a story is sort of supposed to do. That's what structure is all about. What is the intention and objective of this part of the story in terms of the audience experience of that story? So you have to know, just from studying structure, you have to study structure to know if you have good structure or if you don't. It's going to be tough to just guess if you do or if you don't. You have to know, what is the first act supposed to do? How am I supposed to set up the main character and show what is their sort of normal world like? What do they want? What have they been denied? What is motivating them? Where is the urgency coming from? Why can't they change? What is the theme that this is presenting about the world? All these kind of basic things. You have to internalize this and also study this to have the best sense of how these things are working together. Are the plot points effective in providing the story with momentum? Are we moving through this fast enough, or are we lingering too long in individual moments or brick wall scenes where the character just tries something and it just doesn't work and they aren't sent off in some kind of new and interesting direction? Brick wall after brick wall will just lead to this sense that the story's going nowhere. We're trapped in the mud, and that's not the feeling you want. You want the audience to be vibrating with excitement. We're like shivering with glee at the end of every scene, like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. I can't wait to see the result of that. Because of this, I'm dreading what's going to happen next, or I'm really looking forward to what's happening next. We get this whole idea of suspense at that intersection of hope and dread, where the audience is hoping one thing happens and they're dreading that another thing could happen, right? And you can play with that as much as you want as the storyteller. Like, you can push and pull there. You can use hope and dread in equal measure, or you can use most of one or most of the other. You can pull the rug out and swap them on the reader, or any number of things like that. But basically, the reader has to be hoping one thing will happen and be nervous that another thing, a bad thing, could happen, right? If you don't have either of those, then they're not really invested in the plot, and you're not really going to be, no matter how good your plot or structure is, you're not really going to be able to keep the reader going if they just don't care what's happening. We need to be sure that we are accomplishing not just the structural goals of each part of the script, but also that the audience is feeling hooked and engaged and like they're in good hands with the plot they're reading. So we want your script to have this sense of texture and quirks and nuances and details, and like it feels like these are real people that really live in this fake little world, that have lives that have existed up until now, and they're going to continue to exist after the story's over. This experience is, we're building to these emotional moments that are delivering on the promises of your genre. We're setting things up and paying them off properly with no hanging threads. And essentially we are moving our reader through the story in the most entertaining way with a strong sense of momentum and propulsion and excitement and fun. We want them to be having fun. Plot and structure are tools to help you calibrate that sense of fun on the page. And also many other questions like, is there enough conflict? Is it compelling? Is it suspenseful or credible enough? We want to have characters that we can identify with in some kind of way, like that we don't have to want to be their friend or want to be them or anything like that, but we get where they're coming from basically. We want them to have memorable introductions. We remember who they are in terms of their descriptions, their quirks, their goals, internal and external. It should make sense what they want and why. How they're going about it should make sense. Are there strong motives? Is there an antagonist? Are they equal to the hero, or are they stronger than the hero, or do they feel sort of weaker than the hero? Like the hero could kick their butt anytime they choose, and they're just not. That would be a problem with character, right? So overwhelming odds and escalating sense of difficulty are going to tie into this plot and structure, but if you don't have adequately motivated characters or competent enough characters or problems like this, then it can start to manifest problems even before we look at plot and structure. And then last slide on this, of course, we need to make sure the character arcs are making sense. Character arc is another huge thing to address in notes. The arc sort of being the trajectory the character makes as a result of the choices that they make throughout the story. The internal and the external kind of weave together as they have something that they're trying to pursue externally, but maybe some need or some internal issue that they're attempting to, or they're either attempting to fix or they're trying to avoid dealing with, or some truth about the world that they're denying. Something like this. There's all kinds of ways we can look at this, but essentially, does your character feel like they should be in the story? Are they interesting to watch? Are they moving the plot forward? Okay. Any questions on these three categories of how we evaluate if a script is working? Premise and concept, plot and structure, character and dialogue. Charlie says makes sense. Great. Carmen, go ahead. Hi, Carmen. Can you... your mic is muted. Maybe you can unmute and speak out.
Sorry.
There you go.
My question is, should I only go to dialogue if I absolutely cannot figure out anyways, a way to show what I'm trying to show, moving the story forward, right? Use dialogue as a way to expose something, right? If I just absolutely cannot figure out how to move the story forward with a descriptive, right, or an action, obviously, then use dialogue, right, to convey that part.
It's a good
Does that
question.
make
You're
sense?
sort of asking, should dialogue be like a last resort?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it depends on the kind of story you're trying to tell, I would say. I don't normally think of dialogue as like a last resort, like try everything before you try to have a character talk, just because talking is so natural to us. It just makes a lot of sense in many circumstances. Like, it just is one of the primary ways that people get what they want in real life, right? Which is by asking or speaking, saying what you want, using either emotional tactics or, trying to express your needs or what you would like in a situation. So it's almost odd to go through a story too long without any dialogue, because we're very used to watching movies about people that talk to get what they want, and also we like to see who characters are through their dialogue. So I wouldn't think of dialogue really as a last resort unless you're trying to tell a really quiet, really contemplative sort of story. Maybe if you're trying to tell a story of someone lost in nature, or a story about a Buddhist monk or something like that, maybe then that would be sort of amongst the goals that you had for that project, which would be, whenever possible, we don't have dialogue. Maybe something like Mad Max even kind of has that vibe sometimes. or Samurai Jack, or some of these kind of very stoic action adventure hero kind of stories where the good guy never really talks unless he has to, that kind of thing. You can totally do that, but I would say for the most part, audiences like dialogue, and we want it, and we're paying money to come and watch your actor talk and do stuff on screen. You might as well use it as part of the main ways of entertaining them. So I don't think you should be afraid of dialogue, but if lack of dialogue really contributes to the overall tone and mood of what you're going for, if you think this should be like a really quiet, empty kind of story or something like that, then maybe on a movie-by-movie basis you can adopt that principle and use that to guide how you construct the scenes.
Okay, I think I worry about structuring the entire thing after the dialogue. But that's okay, right? Just as long as the entire thing is not just purely dialogic.
Yes.
Obviously, right? Because we need setting and we need action.
Yeah, we need to know what we're looking at and what people are doing. Of course, you can have stories that are largely based on talking, like courtroom movies are almost entirely just people talking in rooms. But the dialogue has to be, if you're doing a purely dialogue-driven movie, it has to be really good. And also, we still have to know what we're looking at, what people are doing, and the basic, like, you can't not have any action. You're not writing a radio drama.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the questions. Let's check the chats. When is there too much dialogue? Dan asks. Merrickson says when there's 2 whole pages with minimal scene direction and just all dialogue. Yeah, these are sometimes called ticker tape scenes. A ticker tape scene is any scene with no action at all, just dialogue all the way straight down. Those should be pretty rare in most scripts. Unless it's a very dialogue-driven movie like Courtroom, or some comedies are really just full of talking, especially if you're doing kind of like a screwball comedy or something like that. Those can be very, very, very talky. If you're writing like an Aaron Sorkin political type movie or something like that, that could be wall-to-wall dialogue. But anytime you have a ticker tape scene, the dialogue has to be fantastic and necessary, and I would be very, very wary of those. More than like 3 or 4 of those in a script should start to raise flags, and you should check those scenes to make sure, like, is this really all able to be conveyed by dialogue alone? And if not, then you might want to sort of mix those up with actions here and there that kind of clarify what we're looking at. What are those major emotional shifts that are happening? Because because action lines are not just saying, a car smashes through the wall. You're saying stuff like, you have to kind of inform the performance a little bit, and you have to kind of tell us what's going on with the character. He's his fists are slowly clenching as he listens to the testimony. He's like a can of soda shaken to the bursting point. You have to kind of give us a little more sometimes. So too much dialogue can lead to us just not knowing what's going on with the characters or what we're looking at. I would try to keep those ticker tape scenes down to a minimum, and if you see more than a couple of them, really assess, is there more clarification or context that I can be doing in this scene? Charlie says now she's going to do a radio drama. Okay, great. You can also write a radio drama, in which case you want to be minimal. It's the opposite. You want to be minimal if you're doing radio with the action. The action should just be, like footsteps. A car pulls up, stuff we can clearly hear, as like sound effects, basically, that we can really clearly hear. Okay, let me see. Oh, there's a question from TQ in the chat who says, what are some of the most relatable characteristics and the most interesting characters we've come across in film and TV? Question for everyone here, so feel free to reply to that message if you have some ideas. I will just say one thing, and I think this, you get a lot of mileage out of this. My answer to this question is characters with contradictory traits. People that have 2 aspects of them that don't feel like they should go together, or maybe even seem like they couldn't possibly exist in the same person. You have the bouncer for the club that's got like a tattoo of a kitty cat on his arm or something like that, right? Or what about Mike from Breaking Bad? He's such a great example of this, isn't he? Where it's like he's essentially a cartel hitman, or not cartel. He works for a drug lord, Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and he loves his granddaughter so much. And he's always like taking her out on little play dates and stuff like this and making sure to get her back home in time. In fact, what he does one time is he gets her a bunch of balloons. He gives her half of them, and she's like, what about the other half? He's like, those are for me. And he uses those later to block a security camera before he shoots a bunch of guys, right? He has both of those sides to him in the same person. How could those possibly go together? How could somebody that's that empathetic and that good with kids be a cold-blooded murderer? But he just is both. So I think that's my general answer for this question, is we're looking for that sense of contradiction, or seeming like what seems as if it would be a contradiction. That it sort of invites us to ask the question, how can they coexist? So that's my answer, but feel free, anybody else who'd like to weigh in. Did I miss anything here? Luke also mentions the pilot to Third Rock from the Sun reads like ticker tape, but dialogue's funny enough to carry it in places. Yeah, so sitcom writing is pretty different from screenwriting. Sitcoms have a much greater proportion of ticker tape scenes to other types of media, and you can get away with them in sitcoms, in TV comedy, so much more. TV is very dialogue driven compared to movies, especially TV comedy. Okay, let's continue. Feedback etiquette. So giving and receiving notes, and then we will go into re-outline and revision guides, and then we will wrap up with the lecture portion. We will go to script swap partner time. So let's cover our last few topics here. Thank you for still being here, by the way, everybody. I know this is kind of one of the less sexy, nerdy classes that are like homework, basically, but this is the hard, heavy lifting that you have to really be aware of and be able to do and capable of doing. And like, this is what makes you really employable as a writer, the ability to not only write a great script, but assess the problems in a script and fix them. That is what is like, this is a rare skill set. And there's a reason that some of the best writers, the highest paid writers are making millions and millions of dollars, is because almost no one can do this. Marison's mad at me for giving homework on a Friday. Well, you showed up, so self-inflicted. So let's look at feedback etiquette. And this is really important because so much of what we're doing is receiving feedback and employing that feedback, meaning we have to determine what are we going to use and what don't we use, but also just what is the attitude and manner that you should be using while in this notes stage or in the feedback stage. So you're focusing on the work. You're not focusing on, why did you do this? Why did you bore me with this? Things like this. This is not a personal statement. We're all looking at the same document, and we are ideally working as a team. Like, everyone who is giving you notes and the writer themselves are a team. And it's them versus the problems in that story. It is no one versus anyone else. It's nice when you're giving notes to others to sort of find a couple things that are working well and genuinely working well, and start with that if you can. Nobody likes to hear only negative things, first of all, and if there's anything at all that can be salvaged, or you can say, like, wow, that had some really scary moments in your horror, or like, I really laughed at some parts of that comedy, great job. Like, anything at all like that is really great. Even if you have to kind of make it up a little bit, I don't care if you have to. This is one of those few times where find something at all that is working. Even if it's just like, holy crap, you finished a script, dude, that's amazing. I mean, that might, if your reader is aware that you're gonna, that is what you would say because you had nothing else good to say, then that could potentially not work out. But I hope you understand that, like, even finishing a script is a great accomplishment, and you should find something to compliment the writer on and make them feel good about. Anything. This was a unique idea, if nothing else. If it's not a unique idea, then I love movies like this, and you had some really great moments in here that could totally work with a little adjustment. Something like that. Doesn't really matter what it is. Find something that's working. Or some way to at least make them not feel bad right away. Don't start the note session with just, you messed up, man. You wasted my time. Something like that, right? Only focus on critical suggestions you can make. You want to use your expertise as such as it is, as best you can, to concentrate on the premise, the story, the characters, all those elements that we looked at in our coverage evaluation, and any big structure problems that make the story less coherent. Ask the questions like, who's driving the story? Did I root for them? Were their goals and obstacles clear? Did the dialogue sound distinct for each character and reveal their personality? And try to set aside your personal preferences and consider who is the audience for that. That's why comps are so important, comps being the comparables titles. If somebody says this is going to be like Dune meets Blade Runner 2049, then we know that they're not trying to do a shoot-'em-up action sci-fi. They're trying to do slow, contemplative, people staring off into the distance kind of sci-fi, right? So you have to take that into account. And even if you hated those two, I walked out of Blade Runner 2049, for instance. Would I love that movie? Probably not. But would you be able to assess that person's intentions and determine if they're making something that they're target audience would want to check out. Okay, so that's just my tips in giving notes to others. And in receiving notes, I would say, I think we already covered some of the major points of this, but stay humble and appreciative. And even if you have no idea what to make of certain notes, you can always just say, got it, thank you, and I'll write that down. You never have to have any response beyond that. You don't have to argue or justify. You don't have to say, I already addressed that. Like, and it can sometimes feel annoying when somebody gives you a note that you're like, wait, that's in the script. Like, you ask, why is there no moment where he ever has a conversation with his mom? And you're like, he does have a moment where he has a conversation with his mom. You can ask follow-ups if you need to. Wait until they're done, though. Wait until the person's done giving their notes. Don't interrupt them. But then you can raise your hand and say, so respectfully, I just want to double check to make sure. You mentioned where you thought it would be great if he had a conversation with his mom. I want to check to see if, did the scene on page 15 feel like it didn't address that note, or did that feel like it wasn't a substantial enough confrontation or something like that? You're going to have to sort of suss out what they're getting at. This is an idea called the note behind the note, where you have to kind of figure out, like, maybe you're like, wait, there were a bunch of scenes with that guy and his mom. Why did they give that note then? Oh, maybe it's because none of them were funny at all. You have to kind of look at your goals and what are the intentions and like where that person might be coming from, and determine what are they really trying to say by giving that note. It's really tough, and professionals struggle with this all the time, so don't feel like you have to be perfect at this right away. But the note, determining the note behind the note, is a really key part of trying to figure out what feedback you need to pay the most attention to. Okay, any questions on how to decide what changes to make, or how to evaluate feedback, or how to give or receive notes? Carmen, again, go ahead.
Can you go back to the previous slide for a second?
This one?
Okay, right here it says, what are the most critical suggestions you can make? Concentrate on premise, story, characters, and scene work. And then, okay, the last sentence here, especially any big structure problems, making the story less coherent. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're saying here, I'm assuming that you make these slides yourself.
Me and Nacho make them, yeah.
Okay, cool. They're great. I mean, so much information, I'm overwhelmed. But I don't really understand, especially, yes, comment on the structure, or don't comment on the structure, especially if you recognize that the writer is, in the early stages of learning screenwriting. Because a lot of times I won't say anything about structure if I know that the writer is really kind of new to this particular, form.
That's a good nuance.
What do you?
So yeah, that's worth asking, definitely. So I would say you have to kind of assess where the writer is at sometimes, and you do have to kind of tailor your notes just to keep in mind what they might not know about, or what they have never heard of before, or things like that. Which is why on this paragraph we do mention big structure problems, which would be not like your first act is dragging by 5 pages. That's like a little thing, right? It would be more like there's a huge flashback in the middle that I don't know how it connects to the story at all. Something that is really jumps out and is so obvious that you feel no matter where their skill level is at, that they would be able to get, okay, that is a structural issue. Like, not just nitpicking about exact page numbers or things like that, but saying there's something that I fundamentally am not understanding.
Oh no, I think I might have one of those in my script. Now that you mention it. Well, thank you.
You haven't gotten feedback yet, have you?
No, but you saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, I think I might have one of those.
Okay. Well,
you know what I mean?
Now that you know, you can fix it before you get the feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks
or just wait, right? And see, maybe I could just be imagining it too. So a lot of times I rely on you guys,
It's possible.
Yeah.
There's always that you could always be overthinking or psyching yourself out on something that is true. So that's why it's best to wait until that initial feedback to make those big choices.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Luke has a question. Go ahead.
Sure, about giving feedback. What if you're just a hypercritical person in general, like I am, and would give, a great screenplay, I would have tons of notes. How do I sort of couch my criticism, or how do I tell the difference between, or show the difference between for the reader or the person receiving the feedback, between sort of like my personal preference and things that are sort of more like objectively true about writing.
This is
if that makes sense.
Good. No, sure. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Very good question. You can definitely couch your feedback in those terms. You can just explicitly divide them in that way if you want to. This is part of just one of those things that you will, and the more feedback you give, the more you will naturally just start being able to separate and delineate between those things on your own. You'll be able to say things like, let's evaluate the structure. Okay, after we've done that, here's my thoughts just as a fan of this genre. Like, as a thriller fan, I thought the opening was really boring. Like, maybe structurally it's working, but I wasn't hooked by it in the way that I needed to be. You can always separate your own opinion from, or like your own sort of like take on it, versus your objective assessment of those other elements, which is where I think, speaking in the sort of shared vocabulary of screenwriting terms like plot, structure, pacing, character, all those things, and sort of like maybe even going through like the sort of checklist of different categories first will leave you a little room at the end to say, okay, now that we've gotten through the academic basics of this, let's go on to just my specific take on this, and I'll just tell you, here's how I felt about it, which is more than just analyzing it, right? So I would just straight up separate them out as you give the feedback if you can.
Okay.
If you're having trouble doing
sense.
that and you're having trouble assessing, you may just want to make a little rubric for yourself or something and say, here's all the objective points that I will assess first and then go into my opinion. Or maybe have a coverage guide with you as you go through it or something like that if you were just looking for a more concrete list.
It's generally just me going through all my notes for table reads and trying to make heads or tails of what's going to be helpful or not.
Yeah, it's tough. There's no perfect way to do it. Most of the time, I would just be as open and honest with the person receiving the notes as possible, and just say, maybe you can even say, I'm not sure if this is my preference or if this is an actual structural problem, if you're not sure. Yeah, just tell them exactly where you're coming from, and that should, like, the person receiving notes understands that there's going to be some bleed through between anyone's preferences and their objective assessment of the work.
All right, and I'm very opinionated about science fiction, and in particular, like future. People's visions of the future, I feel, are like extremely limited. So yeah, it's going to be. It'll be easy for me to create a rubric and sort of separate. Okay, this is how I feel about this thing, and this is, what you're trying to do and what the writing is trying to do, and etc. I think that makes sense.
That's a good way to go about it.
In my brain.
Or even at the beginning of the feedback session or before you even show up for the notes or anything, maybe just tell the reader beforehand, say like, okay, I'm excited to read your samurai movie. You should know I am the biggest samurai movie fan in the world, so I will get hung up on any historical inaccuracies or something like that, right?
Okay.
You can always
gotcha.
of forewarn them a little bit if you're like, you have some really specific perspective that you're going to come in with, and that'll help.
I have actually given Michelle like that exact note almost. It's like, okay, like I love science fiction, but I am obsessed with like world building and making it believable. So that's helpful. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's useful to have specialized people within your feedback providers. Like, we want to know like what each person is going to like bring to the table, and if you can identify that, it's useful for the writer.
Yeah, I think that was helpful too. All right, appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for the questions. So let's see. I'm just checking the chat. Okay. Let's spend like 10 minutes on a little more detail. Excuse me, the hiccups. A little more detail on reoutline and revision guide, and I'll show you, of course, that kind of color coding system that I use too. And then we will go ahead into swap partners. So we covered the basic steps of this, and I kind of explained piece by piece. With the process, we go from feedback, notes document, reoutline, which is the new scene cards for your script that reflect the version of the script that you have, not the version that you wish you had or the changes that you want to make, exactly what you have there. The revision guide is the third thing. And that's where you're sort of going to be combining your earlier two documents of the notes document with the reoutline. And because I've already covered reoutline, let's actually just move ahead to revision guide. Maybe we'll just kind of take a look at what one of these looks like. So let me bring up this here. So this was a big revision document that I've made. I've gone through many revisions of this script in the past. And I know you can't exactly see all the text very clearly, but let's not really worry as much about the text as how we're formatting what we're seeing here. So you can see that each of the scene cards has a page number directly above it, so we know exactly what page that we're on. We have about a paragraph that explains what happens in that scene. And then what you can do is you can sort of, once you have that really nice and clear re-outline, so this represents the entire story, you can start dragging in notes from your revision document. So for instance, if we wanted to bring in a note here, let's say we had a big problem with the opening scene, it's not exciting enough. Not exciting enough. Add a fight with 5 ninjas. Let's say 3 ninjas, because that's a series. You would drag that in from your notes document, and you would highlight it yellow, meaning that's something that needs to change. You can also highlight things green for it. That is totally fine and needs to stay exactly as it is. So I would mark any of the scenes that are working fine, just totally green right off the bat. And then you can sort of start finding those places where you need to make some changes. If you were finding maybe that some stuff, the scene's mostly working, but maybe something needs to change in the middle, you can always highlight just part of it to mark it yellow, like that. And then when you work through your revision guide, the goal will be to turn everything green by the end. So to kind of keep track of your progress as you're writing the individual scenes, you'll be highlighting with green to indicate that's done and perfectly fine. You can always leave something yellow if you're not sure about it or you need to come back to it later. Red is going to be used for something that needs to be cut. So if you plan on cutting that, we'll just use the basic stoplight system. Green means go, yellow means slow, red means stop. At least in the US. I don't know, in other countries might have different stoplight colors, perhaps. We are going to mark up the entire re-outline, or the copy of your re-outline, of course. You always make copies so you're not marking up the original document, right? But you're going to be able to now just one at a time drag in, or highlight and copy and paste in the notes from your notes document next to the part of the script that needs to change. And by doing that, you'll have a really clear picture of everything you need to work on in chronological order, everything you need to cut, everything that's fine where it is, and everything that needs to be altered. I hope I didn't go through that too fast. Does that make sense to everybody? How to use the color coding system to mark fine, work on it more, or cut it? Luke says makes sense. But it hurts my eyes. Well, you can choose different colors if you want to. I've been using, when I do POVs in my novel outlines, I use kind of lighter earth tones. I'll do like, this is one character here, like this kind of very sandy brown. Or you can pick like a lighter shade of red if you must. Dakota says, reminds me of script breakdown days of production. Yeah, line producers do this all the time, which is where you actually go through and mark up an entire script with different colors for each element, like sets, characters that are introduced, props, everything else that would need to be in the budget breakdown. Were you a line producer, Dakota? He has been. There you go. Cool that we have that. Luke says it's been ultra useful working with a partner. Yeah, having a kind of shared color coding system so everybody agrees and knows what these things mean is really essential when collaborating. Okay, so that's what the revision guide will ultimately sort of look like. It will be a whole set of scene cards, maybe sort of shorter than your initial scene cards. They might just be a sentence or two each rather than a full paragraph, just because you already know basically what happens in that moment. But the whole thing should be marked up with your version of green, yellow, and red for keep it just like that, change this, or cut this. Okay, so we've covered re-outline and revision guide. Let's go into last thing I will cover will be extra passes, and then we will open up to swap partners. So we mentioned the rewrite process, meaning you just open the blank and brand new script, and you're going to be copying and pasting in scenes from your old draft, the ones that you marked green, as needed, but not as your default option. It should never be your default option to just copy and paste everything. You want to leave that room for yourself to make those additional changes or connective tissue between moments or anything else. And you're going to start on that blank page 1 and update your revision guide as you work through this so you can keep track of your progress and everything you've changed and everything that will need to be changed later, or maybe new ideas that you have that you're like, maybe the main character should be a fish and not a whale, or whatever it is that you may be so big that you need to push them ahead to the next draft, but you can at least still mark it in your as a note in your revision guide. Then as you move into extra passes, you may have to just look at one element at a time. So if you finish the major steps of the rewrite, then you should assess what still needs a full look through the whole script. That might be just dialogue which is struggling, or just one character's dialogue. Or maybe it's something like the descriptions of the setting, or maybe it's just the action scenes, or maybe it's just the love scenes, or whatever it is that you have. Maybe it's the tone. You have to just assess what still needs an additional full pass through, meaning you read it from beginning to end, marking up all the changes as needed. You don't really have to include in your revision guide stuff that would be covered in your extra passes, but this is kind of just like final cleanup after you've done all the major heavy lifting of the rewrite. But you will have to probably go back and just like double check, make sure this character arc works. Character arcs are going to be the biggest area of improvement and change during these extra passes. And of course, make sure your prose all looks good and all the, you don't have any hanging lines or typos or anything like that. Of course, you should include a proofreading pass amongst the extra passes if you need one. There should not be typos or grammar mistakes or English problems in your script, even if you are not a native speaker. You are all graded on the same criteria, which is this must be completely fluent, flaw-free, problem-free English. Okay, I think I said something that made Siri talk to me. She's Googling something on the other side of the room. Thanks, Siri. Okay, so where are we? How do we know when it's done? I don't really need to go into all this stuff at the moment just because I think I'd rather leave that extra time for just open questions and also swap partners. We've spent long enough in the lecture, but you can ask questions like how do you know when it's done if you want to. Let's open to any questions on the rewrite process, and then we'll do swap partners. Feel free to either raise a hand or write in the chat.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So besides just using the highlighter and everything, like if you have just a complete Gordian knot that you can't untangle for your rewrite, and I don't know, is it better to just start over with a blank document from scratch and just not even worry about and try to sort of rewrite it from and borrow as needed from the old thing, or should you immediately start cannibalizing the old thing in your rewrite?
Meaning like you did the re-outline and looking at the re-outline, you're like, how on earth could I possibly begin to fix this kind of thing?
Right.
Well, that's a good question. If it seems so overwhelmingly difficult, like you don't even know where to start, I would assess if you're sure you want to give it to readers or not. If you think maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm overthinking it, maybe it does make sense, it can still be worth getting a read to make sure, just like to confirm your suspicions that this is an absolute mess. Okay. It could be that it's not. It could be that your readers, especially if you have a very proficient reader or someone in development, they could look at it and be like, I can tell you how I would go about fixing this. So it may not be as tangled as you think, just to begin with. But if you're sure that it is, if you look at your re-outline and you don't even know how to begin on a revision guide, I would start a new sketchbook and copy paste things. Yeah, like you mentioned, cannibalize as needed. Like if there are some good ideas in the first one, but if it's that problematic, like after a full draft and a full re-outline that you don't know how to begin at all, I would probably approach the next draft as a brand new script.
Okay, that makes sense. I tend to start things over too much, so I'm trying to err in the other direction. But yeah, if it does get to that point, at least I have that escape hatch of like, okay, I can just start a new document, a new sketchbook.
Yeah, you can totally do all these things as long as you are accomplishing the major goals of your reading, your writing, and you're moving on. Like you're ideally finishing things and moving on. If what you're doing is not leading you to writing things to the end and moving on to the next thing, something's wrong in the process. It could be that you're starting over too much, but it is an option for you. It is like the self-destruct button, the total blank page.
Some of it's self-sabotage and some of it is just moving on because I know it's not working before it's even gotten a chance.
It happens to everybody. It's not like, you know, you're far from the only one that's ever happened to, for sure. But it could, I would just say, maybe share with at least one person. This is why it's useful to have a partner or a group, a writing group or a consistent partner, because then you could, or a lab you can go to week after week, just saying. But that's a great place to sort of just double check and make sure, is this an unfixable mess, or am I just psyching myself out?
All right, that's helpful.
Thanks for the question. Here's a question from Dakota. What's the most important thing to keep in mind throughout the entire process? Ridley Scott said, what is the why, or what is this actually about, for instance?
Oh, the guiding principle. Yeah, I really like that. Like a lighthouse to sail the ship by. It's really helpful. You know, sometimes it can just be your log line or whatever. Like, okay, I'm lost in the weeds. What is the movie about? Oh, I have my log line. Okay, this is what the scene is about. It's so helpful.
For me, that's the answer. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for weighing in. Like, to me, the log line is intended. That's what the log line is really best at. It's what it's really for. It's to set I will say log line and comps. Look at your log line, look at your comps, and say, am I creating a story that feels like it's fulfilling the promises of this log line, and an experience that fulfills the emotional and genre promises of these comps? And with just a log line and comps, you can have that really clear guiding direction that you would be able to then use as a diagnostic tool at the end of the draft to assess, did I meet my goals, or did I drift too far off course? So if anything, for me, it's log line and comps. Any other questions? Carmen says, gotta make sure my log every time that my log line is good. Yep, the log line is the concrete foundation that the building is assembled on. And if you have a shaky, cracked foundation, then the building could collapse at any point. Dan says, what if you can never figure out correct comps, or any? I would watch more and read more things to begin with, because there's always something that you can comp. You can also always throw it to either your writing group or a genre group or another meetup, like another kind of club or activity, to have other people suggest comps for you. But I would say you should typically be writing things that you can figure out some kind of comp for. Like, it might just be that you need to look at what's on TV and just maybe do a quick Google search to see anything in the same sort of genre world that I might be able to comp now. Comps are usually going to be best if they're things that are currently on the air, or if they're pretty well remembered things from the past 10 to 20 years. Not just suggest asking readers at table reads for comps as well. That's a great idea. TQ says, what is a comp? A comp is a comparison title, comparable title. It's going to be for a movie. Usually they're both going to be movies. For a show, they're going to be both shows, but they don't strictly have to be. But it's going to be how people can assess your goals in terms of the tone and the experience and the subject matter of that script. You're going to say, this action movie is kind of like Die Hard meets Armageddon, right? It's going to be about astronauts fighting terrorists in space. So it kind of helps people calibrate and figure out what your intentions were for the project. Hope that helps. All right, some interesting comments in the chat. If we're done with questions for the moment, then I will check stream people, of course. Adam has joined us from YouTube. Hi, Adam. You're coming in right at the end of this rewrite crash course, but you can rewind it and watch it back if you want to, or join us on Discord for the next one. Go to scriptcamp.net. You can get the link. For now, we're going to, I think, do script swap partners. So, Nacho, should we end the stream, do you think?
Yeah. I was going to just mention to Adam or to anyone else who's watching, here, I'll post the link one more time so you can join us if you have a script, if you want to get some feedback, or anyone who is here. Let's see, I think this works.
So yeah, let's. Should I end the public stream now, Chip? Before
Give me 1 second so that the comment will go through.
Oh, wow, okay, I see.
And then, okay, I think it went through. So hopefully Adam got that.
He just
and
found
then
he just found Script Camp 5 seconds ago. That's great. Well, welcome. You should totally come and join us on Discord.
Yeah, and also the stream, you can rewind it and watch back if you miss something. And I was just going to mention also one more thing for everyone who is, I guess, if you don't need a swap, obviously you can just, you can take off. But if anyone who does want to participate in the swap, we do require that it is like properly formatted. So it will need to be something that you wrote with like screenwriting software. Yeah, I guess we can end the stream if that's good.
Let's wrap up then. Thank you guys so much for being part of it, or at least watching this rewrite crash course class. We hope you got some good info out of this. I know it's kind of hard work at this point, but this is the important heavy lifting of screenwriting that we do every day. So we'll continue on Discord for another 10 minutes as we figure out swap partners, but otherwise we'll see you soon at your next Script Camp class or event. Have a great rest of your Friday.